Esad Wire, also known more infamously as Beast Krule, was an agent of the Venenum Temple of the Officio Audiorum who was primarily active during the middle years of M32. Unlike the majority of operatives that originate from the Venenum Temple, who eliminate their targets with a variety of toxins and poisons, Esad Wire would instead choose to make use of various chemical compounds in order to greatly enhance his already impressive physical strength. This cocktail of drugs, combined with the plasteel-reinforced bones of his hands, gave the assassin the ability to punch clean through an augmented human skull with ease. Somewhat unusually for one of his chosen profession, Wire would manage to briefly retire from the life of an assassin before finding employment as an arbitrator of the Adeptus Arbites and being assigned to a remote monitoring facility somewhere upon Terra. However, shortly after the onset of the War of the Beast, Esad Wire would return to his old ways after being approached and recruited by the Supreme Grand Master of the Officio Audiorum, Drakan Vangorich, before swiftly rising to become both his right-hand man and personal enforcer. The assassin would then go on to perform many notable actions during this particularly turbulent period of Imperial history. After being tasked by Vangorich to follow Marguerite Wenand, the inquisitorial representative to the High Lords of Terra, Wire would proceed to save the Inquisitor from a number of assassins that had been dispatched by her rival, Lord Inquisitor Veritas. Wire would later foil an assassination attempt made against Vangorich by obliterating the would-be sniper's skull with a single punch. When Imperial forces launched a full-scale assault against the Xenos race known as the Orcs upon the world of Ulanor, Wire would be personally tasked by Vangorich with assassinating the Orc warlord known as the Beast. However, as the assassin infiltrated the Temple Gargant of the Beast, he would discover that tens of thousands of Orcs, which were both massive in size and heavily armed, were, in an act of uncharacteristic cunning for an Orc, being held in reserve by the Beast. The Orc warlord had intended to allow Imperial forces to push deeper into the city of Gorkogrod before unleashing his reserves to utterly crush his foes. Unable to reach the Beast, and therefore incapable of fulfilling his mission objectives, Wire, after narrowly avoiding capture by the Greenskins, would hijack an Orc aircraft before rendezvousing with Imperial forces in order to warn them of the trap that had been laid by the Orcs. Following the aftermath of this war, Drakan Vangorich would be appointed by the Lord Commander of the Imperium and Chapter Master of the Imperial Fists, Maximus Thane, as Lord High Protector. This was done in the hopes that Vangorich and the other High Lords would be able to focus on rebuilding the political infrastructure of the Imperium, whilst the Imperial Fists hunted down the remnants of the Beast's horde. Vangorich, however, would soon come to realise that his fellow High Lords would continue to put their own personal agendas over the good of the Imperium itself, and his patience would ultimately snap, leading to a series of events that became known within Imperial records as the Beheading. During the course of the Beheading, Vangorich would have all but one of the High Lords assassinated and replaced with what was essentially a puppet government with the Grand Master of Assassins at its head. As these events unfolded, Esad Wire would be tasked with murdering Werner Zek, the Grand Provost Marshal of the Adeptus Arbites, and would prove successful in his mission. But Wire would begin to experience ever-increasing doubt regarding his master's increasingly unhinged behaviour and actions, and believed that Vangorich would eventually have him killed as well. Upon returning to the Imperial Palace and learning that the majority of the High Lords had been eliminated, Wire, disgusted by Vangorich's actions, would strike, hoping to eliminate the now tyrannical despot, though he would be swiftly overpowered and defeated by his master. As punishment, Esad Wire would be forcibly converted into an Eversor assassin. Despite his actions, Vangorich's rule would, for a time, prove to be somewhat prosperous. As new Space Marine chapters were founded, the armies that had been decimated during the War of the Beast were restored to fighting strength, and Terra's fortifications would be repaired. However, after 80 or so years, Vangorich's sanity would begin to slip, due to the stress of the responsibilities placed upon him, and the dictator would become increasingly erratic and violent, ordering numerous purges and massacres almost at random. Word of Vangorich's actions would reach Maximus Thane, who would return to Terra in order to put a stop to the Grandmaster's madness. Thane, accompanied by 400 Astartes from the Imperial Fists, Sable Swords, and Halo Brethren chapters, would learn that Vangorich had retreated to the Eversor Assassin Temple, located at Terra's North Pole, and upon arriving at the temple, Thane's forces would be assailed by 100 Eversor assassins. In the wake of the carnage that ensued, only 3 figures would remain standing: Drakan Vangorich, Maximus Thane, and a single Eversor assassin that was revealed to be none other than Esad Wire. Somehow, Wire was able to overcome the mental conditioning inflicted upon him and refuse to kill Thane, allowing the Imperial Fist to execute Vangorich with a single shot from his bolt pistol. Following the death of Vangorich, Esad Wire would vanish, seemingly without a trace. So what could have happened to this now former assassin? The first and admittedly most likely possibility regarding the fate of Esad Wire is that he simply perished. This would be due primarily not as a result of any potential injuries which the assassin may have suffered during the Imperial Fists raid upon the Eversor Temple, but more in part to the unique physical characteristics of Eversor assassins in general. Not only are the bodies of Eversors continuously flooded with various chemical compounds, such as combat drugs and stimulants, but these assassins also have additional adrenal ducts grafted into their bodies, in order to heighten their reflexes and reaction speed. In addition, the immune systems of Eversors will, effectively, go into overdrive, in order to prevent this unnaturally heightened level of chemicals from poisoning the assassin. To compensate for the additional strain forced upon their bodies by this cocktail of stimulants, Eversor assassins will have a secondary heart surgically implanted into their chest cavity, which not only helps maintain their now hyperactive circulatory system, but also serves as a failsafe should their primary heart be damaged in battle. However, the numerous chemical compounds flowing through the veins of an Eversor assassin will also have the side effect of transforming them into what is essentially a living time bomb. Should the heart or brain of an Eversor cease functioning, then the various chemicals within their bodies will no longer be regulated by their immune system, and thus will begin to react violently with one another. This reaction will ultimately result in the assassin's body detonating with an explosive force equal to that of a plasma grenade. Because of this, in order to keep their operatives alive for as long as possible, the Officio Audiorum will typically keep Eversors locked away within cryogenic suspension until they are ready to be unleashed, so as to prevent them from expiring from the immense strain that is forced upon their bodies. This will also serve to prevent others, such as temple serfs or Mechanicus maintenance staff, from being inadvertently harmed by the Eversors. Thanks to the various stimulants that these assassins are administered, combined with the mental indoctrination and reconditioning processes that recruits are forced to undergo, Eversors are transformed into utterly psychotic and maniacal creatures, and should they lack a specific target to eliminate, or otherwise fail to be given specific orders by their masters, then they will proceed to slaughter anything and everything within their path. With this in mind, it's possible that with the stresses sustained by both his body and mind, as a result of breaking through the mental conditioning that had been inflicted upon him whilst being converted into an Eversor, Esad Wire could have simply succumbed to the stresses incurred upon his body from the various surgical alterations conducted upon it, though not necessarily immediately. Alternatively, perhaps Wire could have simply been eliminated by any surviving operatives which may have been present within the temple, due to Wire being, for lack of a better term, defective. After all, an Eversor assassin that fails to fully submit to the temple's indoctrination processes could become a dangerous and utterly unstable wildcard. Such individuals could theoretically embark upon unsanctioned killing sprees, use their newfound skills for selfish or heretical purposes, or simply allow their biological functions to overcharge in order to perform a suicide bombing. As such rogue elements would not be tolerated by any of the Assassinorum temples in any circumstance. But then again, it has been known for certain members of the Eversor temple to simply be forced into permastasis, where they will be locked away and only released in the most extreme of circumstances, as shown with the Eversor operative known by the codename of Tormentius, who despite successfully completing over 60 missions for the Assassinorum, was infamous amongst his handlers for being almost completely uncontrollable. Perhaps Wire, due to feeling betrayed by Vangorich, would attempt to cause as much destruction throughout the Eversor temple as possible, either out of spite or perhaps in a subconscious desire for revenge, before being finally put down by any security measures that the temple may have had in place. Though admittedly, if additional security measures were indeed present, then why didn't Vangorich unleash them upon the Imperial Fists during their assault upon the temple? Alternatively, perhaps Esad Wire had attempted to re-enter cryogenic suspension. As mentioned earlier, Eversor assassins, when not in the field, must be kept in cryostasis so as to prevent their body succumbing to the increased strain forced upon it from the various stimulants flooding their circulatory systems. Being both an operative of the Officio Assassinorum and the former right-hand man of its Grand Master, Wire would likely be at least partially aware of such surgical alterations which are conducted upon those inducted into the Eversor temple. With this in mind, Wire could have sought to inter himself into cryogenic suspension in order to prevent himself from dying. While this does seem to be a somewhat logical supposition, it would appear to be extremely out of character for Wire to perform such an action, especially given the tremendous efforts made by the assassin to break through his psychological conditioning. Indeed, it seems highly unlikely that Wire would go through such efforts to undo the mental indoctrination performed upon him, only for him to return to cryostasis, where such a process could potentially be repeated, and once again transform Wire into a psychotic killing machine. As detailed within the 2nd edition Assassin Codex, a series of neurological data links will connect the very mind of an Eversor assassin to their cryogenic casket. Such links will primarily be used in order to deliver a list of objectives, such as high priority targets to the assassin during their deployment process, though it is also suspected that they will simultaneously reinforce the mental reconditioning by repeatedly playing specific subliminal recordings for such a purpose. Admittedly though, it is also possible that Wire could have attempted to enter stasis regardless, as it is reasonable to assume, given the immense stress that both his body and mind were under at this time, that the assassin may have simply been incapable of acting in a rational or coherent manner. The final major possibility is that Wire could have sought out those members of the Eversor temple who oversee or even perform the surgical procedures that are conducted upon new inductees. Perhaps the assassin could have hunted down these surgeons in the hopes that, somehow, they could reverse the biological alterations that had been forced upon him against his will. But even if Wire was able to find an individual, or even a series of individuals, with the relevant medical expertise and training, it's unclear as to whether such radical modifications to an Eversor's physiology are capable of being reversed. Even if such a thing were possible, it may prove to be far too dangerous of an undertaking, as one wrong move could potentially cause the various chemical compounds within an Eversor's body to detonate, which in turn would likely kill anybody unfortunate enough to be within the immediate vicinity of the blast. Regardless of the fate that befell Esad Wire following the events of the beheading, his actions would prove nonetheless to be an important footnote within the annals of Imperial history. What do you think? Leave a comment below, and thanks for watching.